Hey everyone, so we're going to look at a game between two of the greatest US players in history actually, Bobby Fischer and Samuel Reshevsky. Now we all know Bobby Fischer is an absolutely great player, and Reshevsky was also a great grandmaster in his own right. We all remember that picture where he's playing several older players when he's like a kid, like 6 years old or something, playing a simultaneous. So as I say, great players. This was played in the year 1958 in the US Championships. And the game I'm going to look at is where Bobby Fischer was playing with the white pieces. Reshevsky was playing with black. But this game just sort of shows Fischer's brilliance and sharpness when it comes to openings. And I think a lot of people seem to forget how sharp he actually was. So in this game, Fischer kicked off with his typical move e4. Reshevsky played the Sicilian with c5. Knight to f3 was played, and knight c6, and d4. Takes, and Reshevsky here played the move g6. So we get into an accelerated dragon variation. Typically black could play, if you wanted a dragon, play d6 instead of g6. But the g6 move is so black can play d5 in one move. White could play c4 here and get into a Maroczy bind if they really wanted to stop this d5 push from black. But also this g6 move stops white from playing the Yugoslav attack, which Fischer played a lot of actually and destroyed a lot of Sicilians with. However, in this game, so g6 has been played, Fischer played bishop to e3. Reshevsky played knight to f6, attacking the pawn on e4. Fischer defended with knight c3. Black played bishop g7, fianchetting the bishop, and Fischer played bishop c4. Black castled. Fischer played bishop to b3. And so here we just take a pause and see what moves black could play here. In the game, Reshevsky played knight to a5, attacking the bishop on b3. Typically here, black could play d6, which has been played in a lot of games. And white now typically plays f3 to reinforce their centre, and play could continue with bishop d7, queen d2, rook c8, and white typically castles queenside and launches an attack with these two pawns, and black typically plays moves like queen a5 and maybe sacrifices their rook on c3 at some point. But also in this position, a5 is a typical move as well. Again, white typically castles, and there's like a nice little trick here with a4. For instance, if white takes this off with knight, the e4 pawn falls. So we get into variations like this. But in this position, Reshevsky now played knight a5, and this is actually a big blunder, believe it or not. And I wonder if you can see why. Now, if you really want to pause the video here and try and work out what Fischer played, by all means do so. But I'm going to suggest you pause the video after Fischer's next move. So Fischer in the game played e5, which hits the knight on f6. And let's say black now played knight to h5. The knight will be trapped after g4 because they've got no more squares to go to. The best move for black is to take the bishop, but after pawn takes, the knight on h5 is trapped and we've got no more squares. So after this e5 move by Fischer, there's not many squares the knight can go to. If black tries knight takes bishop, then white could just take the knight. And again, if black takes the rook on a1, then just take the bishop, king takes, and the next move white can take the a1 knight. And will be two pieces for the rook up, with a better position. So in the game, Reshevsky retreated it to the only square that's possible, knight to e8. And now here I suggest you pause the video and try and work out what Fischer played next, because what he played next is an incredibly genius move. And again, just shows his sharpness in these type of positions. So let's get into it. Fischer now played the amazing move, bishop takes f7 check. But you're probably thinking, what on earth is this move? Surely now I can just take it? Let's play rook takes the bishop. But here comes the trick. White now has knight to e6. The point is the queen is now trapped on d8 for black. So the queen's attacked by the knight. It can't go to c7 because the knight covers that square, and it can't go to b6 because the bishop covers that square. And the knight can't be taken because then queen takes queen will be played. So if we just go backwards, if king h8 to avoid the tactics, again knight to e6 just traps the queen and white should win the game. So in the game actually Reshevsky has to take with the king. It has to be king takes f7 to stay in the game. And here now Fischer still traps the queen with knight to e6. So the pawn can't take the knight because then queen takes queen. And as I say, the c7 and b6 squares are covered by the minor pieces. However, Reshevsky's best move actually to take the knight off with pawn takes e6. If the king takes this knight, it's suicide because then white can play queen to d5 check. And after king to f5, white just mates with the move g4. The other move is king takes g4 in this position, and then queen to e4 check. And black's got two moves pretty much. Let's say king h5. Then white can calmly play rook to g1, threatening queen to g4 checkmate. If knight to f6 to defend, just queen f3, king h4 is the only move, and then bishop to g5 is checkmate. And as I say, if king to h3 instead, again rook g1 just wins, threatening queen g4. If d6 to stop queen g4, then rook g3, king takes h2 is the only move, and queen g2 is checkmate. And the king just gone for an absolute trek and got mated. So in the game, Reshevsky was forced to play pawn takes knight. This allows Fischer to win the queen. Queen takes d8 was played, attacking the knight on a5 as well. So Reshevsky retreated it backwards, and Fischer retreated his queen to d2. So Reshevsky has a knight and a bishop for the queen, but has a horrendous position. Look at these two double pawns for black. The king's blocking the rook, and it's going to take time for black to sort this out. In the meantime, Fischer's got a great position, easy to play. So we'll see how he finishes this up quite quickly. Bishop takes e5 was played, and Fischer castled. There was knight to d6, bishop to f4, and knight to c4. And Fischer plays queen to e2, so attacking c4, attacking the bishop on e5, just basically trading pieces. So Reshevsky took on f4, queen takes knight, attacking the bishop, king g7 to protect the bishop with the rook, and white played knight to e4. It was bishop c7, and Fischer plays knight to c5, attacking these two double pawns. And to be honest, Reshevsky could have resigned here if he really wanted to. It's pretty much over. So rook f6 to defend the pawn, and Fischer played c3. There was e5. Fischer just gets an open file. Fischer just develops his pieces and basically tries to swap in this position. So knight d8, knight d7 hits the rook. There was rook c6 to attack the queen, and the queen jumps into h4, attacking the e7 pawn. The rook defends it, but now comes knight c5. Rook f6 blocks the queen from attacking e7, but Fischer plays very nicely knight to e4, attacking the rook, forcing it to move again. If rook f7 to defend the pawn, then knight g5 comes, attacking the rook and the pawn at the same time. So rook f4 was played by Reshevsky. Fischer just takes off another pawn. The rook goes back to f7, and now just queen to a3. So yeah, to be honest, it's not a position that white can simply steamroller. It's just going to take some time for white to finish black off. There's still a lot of pieces left on the board. But after knight c6, you continue with knight to d6, forcing another trade of pieces. b4 was played, rook to f8, and now just b5. So he's getting on with his pawn pushes here. And a6 was played, b6, bishop to e4, and rook to e1. So Fischer's got all these pieces developed. Basically, black's just trying to hold on here, but now comes rook takes bishop. Allows white to get a pass pawn on the b file, so b7 is played. Rook a to b8, and now Fischer hoovers up the bit extra pawns. Queen takes pawn, knight d8, and rook to b1. There was rook f7, h3 to give the king some space, and another trade occurs. Rook takes b7, and now just queen to a8. And here Reshevsky actually resigned the game. So the knight's attacked, and the knight is also defending the rook. Basically, the only move for black is rook to d7. And I think Reshevsky just finally admitted defeat because white simply plays a4. There's no way to stop this past a pawn, and yeah. The queen is also probably unstoppable on its own anyway. I mean, Fischer could even play maybe queen c8 here as well. And there's nothing really black can do. Black could hope for a fortress, but as I say, this a pawn is just going to queen eventually. But the endgame's really not a good talking point. The main talking point of this game was this incredible move by Fischer. Bishop takes f7. I looked in the database as well, and a lot of players after Fischer's game use this idea if black plays this horrible knight to a5 move, which allows e5, the knight jumps back and bishop takes f7. And for those who don't play e5 in this position, you really should look up your chess history, because you're missing an easy win here with this e5 move. Anyway, thank you for watching. I believe I just hit 2,000 subscribers as well, so thank you very much for watching. I do appreciate everyone who comments and subscribes to the channel. Anyway, see you next time.